Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and Alex King here. Today is Tuesday, February the 19th, 2019. It's 4 p.m. in New York, 1 p.m. in 1 p.m. in Los Angeles. Yes, that's right. Get it together, Walt. it's 9 p.m. in London and 8 a.m. in Sydney, Australia. Wherever you are, thank you for tuning in to another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And I am happy to be doing anything with LOA Today because I've been sick for the last 3 days. And Alex and I were talking before the show. That's one of those flus you definitely do not want to have because it just knocks you right on your butt. In fact, our thoughts and feelings and prayers and so forth have to go out to Bill G, who can't join us today because he has to take his wife to the hospital with possible pneumonia. And that shows just how, this kind of thing can get pretty dangerous. So we're going to put positive thoughts out for them. We hope you'll do the same. And Nino, if you hear this podcast, we hope that you'll get better soon. Keep thinking those positive thoughts. Keep thinking about how great it's going to feel when you feel better again, because that'll get you there quicker. It worked for me, I can tell you that, Alex.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, I was working really hard on that, particularly Sunday night and Monday, just taking my mind off of the fact that I could hardly get out of bed and just focusing as long as I could for periods at a time of what it's like to feel good. What it's like to feel healthy, And it does make a difference. I mean, that combined with huge amounts of water made a big difference. And today I found, whoa, I've got some energy back. I mean, I'm not 100%, but, I got energy back. Good. I mean, I did the podcast this morning. I went out and did a couple things, came back and fell asleep, which is not my normal habit. But I got through 3 hours. I got 4 hours. I got 4 hours of activity, and that's 4 hours more than I'd done the previous 3 days combined. So
there you go.
So fortunately, you've already been through that. You don't have to deal with that right now. So I'm hoping you can tell me you had a great weekend.
I don't remember my weekend. What did I do?
No.
Well, Mike was here until Saturday, and then Sunday I laid around, and yeah, that was my weekend.
Wow.
So Monday I did laundry, and that's.
Real adventurous there, girl, I tell you.
Oh yeah.
You live for the fun. So
Yep.
So this is also a Q&A today, and if anyone wants to post questions, we'll be happy to address them. Meanwhile, we'll of course come up with our own questions to talk about because that's what we do. I want to share one other thing with you, Alex, today, because excuse me, I don't remember if you've met Steve Rowell in a show. I don't think you have.
No, I haven't.
But Steve came on at the same time that Kelly Pretty did, and Kelly, of course, does the Wednesday morning show with us.
Right.
And he gave me a really cool piece of news this morning, which was a great way to come back to doing the podcast. You may or may not know, Steve is a survivor of sexual abuse from when he was a kid.
In the Catholic Church, right.
The Church of England. Church of England.
Oh.
Yeah. And he's actually told me a bit of the story. The first time he told me, I was in tears. It was just unbelievable. Well, he's also been on a long road of his own recovery and has made obviously tremendous strides to the point where now he is a life coach and helping other people who are survivors. And he has been in conversation. Well, first he had the strength of character and confidence and so forth to go to the Church of England and demand compensation, which he got.
Right.
And it helped pay for his house. But more than that, he has been in conversations with the office of the Archbishop of Canterbury, which of course is the head, like the equivalent of the Pope in the Church of England. And he was able to announce this morning that he is being named as a trustee of the Survivors Trust in the UK, which is the largest umbrella organization of survivors of sexual abuse in the UK. And I'm thinking, can you imagine? That is just fabulous. I mean,
that's amazing news,
isn't it? It makes you feel good, right?
Yeah.
And no, it couldn't happen to a better guy. And I love the approach he's taking with him because they tried apparently to funnel him into doing all of his outreach through the Church of England, through the church's newspaper, magazine, and official mouthpieces and so forth. He said, "Well, sorry, that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
we're going through the press. This is all going to be out in the open," and that kind of shook some some collars, shall we say. But
Mm-hmm. Some
they,
collars.
some collars, yes. But nevertheless, they appreciate his viewpoint, and he said, I'm willing to help you guys restore the church's good name, but you're going to have to go through it the hard way. You're not going to get to do it through the easy way." And they've
Right.
apparently agreed to that, which is that speaks well for the people who are in charge of that end.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a very good chance our friend Steve Rowell is going to become somebody who's quite the name in the UK and a famous person, which would be really, really cool.
Cool.
And what better way to do it than for something that is so sorely needed? That is
Yeah.
helping
Yeah.
the victims of
Agreed.
abuse to
Mm-hmm.
overcome the negative. Our congratulations to Steve, and I mean, I love doing I do the show with him twice a week now. He's trying to catch up with you, Alex, because you're doing it. I don't know if he can do that, but he's trying. He's trying very hard.
Oh, your screen froze.
Oh no! Well, let's see if we can do something about that. This has
Let's
been doing
figure
this
it out.
lately. All right, I'm gonna turn my camera off and on. Let's see if that makes a difference.
Okay.
So while we're waiting for that to reset, so I'm going to go to you first because, quite honestly, I'm kind of out of energy. So I'm going to let you be the person to tell me what the next question is, or the first question is we're going to discuss. Okay.
Okay. I have a good question
All right.
because someone had asked me this the other day, and I didn't know how to answer it the proper way. So I'm gonna see what you say.
Okay.
So, what is the difference between karma and law of attraction?
Oh, well, there are quite a few differences.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not an expert on karma per se, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably not going to give a complete answer about that. What
Uh-huh.
I do understand about karma is that it's about bringing along, well, first of all, it's part of the process of what they call reincarnation, coming back over and over and over again into this
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
this planet, into this physical sphere.
Oh, I didn't even think about that part. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And in the
Yeah.
process of doing that, we're also kind of bringing ourselves along from the past. So
Mm-hmm.
any past stuff that we
There you
haven't,
are.
oh, I did it. I got back. Good. Any past stuff that we haven't, completed our journey on, so to speak, we're kind of carrying it around
Mm-hmm.
like baggage, and that baggage
Okay.
needs to be addressed. And once we address it, then we can finally leave it behind. But
Mm-hmm.
that karma is about the baggage we carry along and how we can let go of it, and you know, or not let go of it and suffer the consequences one way or another. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Now, law of attraction applies in all aspects of our life, right?
Right.
So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and is that us here, Chloe? Sounds like she agrees, but maybe
Chloe
she should be
Ann,
giving the
stop
stop.
it. Oh, kids.
So, but since law of attraction applies in all areas of our lives, it certainly is part
Mm-hmm.
of karma. I mean, certainly if we are people who are bringing stuff along from past lives, and Linda Armstrong has talked about this extensively, then that's has a lot to do with what our focus has been, right? Our focus
Mm-hmm.
continues to bring more and more stuff like that into our lives.
Right.
So there's where the overlap is.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are able to change our focus and take steps to break the cycle of karma, so to speak, and finish past business or leave it aside, release it in the ways that Linda has taught us to do through the meditation she's been teaching us to do in the last 5 weeks, especially,
Mm-hmm.
then we are changing the karma. We're changing the karmic experience for ourselves, and that's law of
Mm-hmm.
attraction, right there.
Okay.
So there's a definite overlap because law of attraction covers all areas of our life, but I wouldn't say they're the same thing at all. They're quite different.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So does that answer it? I hope it does.
Yes, that definitely answers
That's the
it.
non-expert version of what karma is about.
Yeah.
You talk to an expert, and they can go into far more details about
I'm sure.
Akashic records and all this other stuff, and it's like half the time my mind starts spinning when I hear a lot of it. But but
Oh,
good question. I don't think we've had that question before. That's a good question. Yeah, law of
yeah,
attraction
yeah.
karma. The only thing I used to know about karma is the joke that I would tell. Um, it was kind of my way of deflecting the fact that I didn't know anything about karma. And so So my reaction was, well, I really don't worry one way. I don't worry one way or another about karma. All I ask is that you don't let your karma run over my dogma, and after that, I'm fine. No problem. I know it's a
Oh my
terrible
God.
joke, but it's a great way to deflect. It really
It's so
is.
bad, it's good. Oh, your karma ran over my dogma. Oh, that's fantastic.
See, this is when you know you're feeling good because I tell a really bad joke and you're laughing anyway. That's definitely a sign.
Oh my
Ah,
God.
so let's see. Oh, and Jeffrey says karma, what goes around comes around. That's true. That is part of karma. Yeah.
Well,
And
that
you
was
also,
the part that I was having the difficulty trying to explain the difference with was, you do bad things and then bad things happen to you
mhm.
and vice versa in good things. So like how does that separate from law of attraction?
It seems to me that karma is almost more about the consequences side than it is
Mhm.
about the cause and effect side.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? I mean, you
right.
don't often hear about people, you occasionally hear about people referring to good karma, but it's always in passing. Bad
Yeah,
karma is the one
yeah.
that they're all focused on.
See, I'm always talking about good karma because I'm like, nope, trying to get that good karma. So I got to behave today.
But yeah, I mean that sure that's deliberate creation, really. Good
Hmm.
karma, bad karma, that's what are you going to focus on? That's what you're going to get more of. So
Yeah,
yeah, to that extent, there's definite overlap for sure.
right. I agree. I agree.
Okay, so it's my turn to come up with a question. Let's see if I can do that in my half awake state. uh, well, okay. This comes right out of my experience the last few days. When you're not feeling yourself, when you're feeling unwell, what steps do you take in order to change your focus so you can start getting better? What's your approach, Alex? How do you do
Oh, I don't know. I'm a miserable patient.
it?
I'm like, oh, mom, I'm dying. But, I rely heavily on the medical community
Hmm.
and everything they have to say. My nurses and what they're like. Well, sometimes because my nurse told me to go to urgent care and get the Thermaflu, whatever it's called, because it shortens the symptoms or whatever. And I was like, "Ah, but I don't want to leave the house. I'm so sick." And then you go and you invite yourself to more sick people, which is how the germs got in the house in the first place,
Well,
because my
yes.
mom had to go to the doctor's office.
Yep.
So she brought the germs home there. But I don't know, like mentally, I can't even focus. So, like, especially if I have a fever, it's a wrap. It's a wrap for me. Like, I
Yeah.
can't. I'm just like, I can't sleep. I can't not sleep. I don't know. I'm a mess. Don't come to me.
Well, it sounds to me like what you're saying is that's something you're still learning to work on,
Yes, yes, definitely. Because
which
I
is
don't get sick
that's not a
very
bad thing.
often. So it's, well, I will say I don't get a cold very often, but I do have other medical issues. And when those arise, I definitely try to concentrate on the good things and what I'm grateful for. You know, I always say every time I have to go to the hospital and they tell me what's wrong, I'm like, well, at least it isn't cancer. So I like to focus on that.
I don't know. I think those people need to work in their bedside manner. But
No, that's what I say.
oh, that's what you say. Oh, I thought that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time I have to go to the hospital and they tell me what's wrong, I always say, at least it isn't cancer, you know.
That's very common, though, isn't it? I mean, how often do people look on what could be the bad side? Well, at least it's not bad, you know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think you're right. You need a little work on that.
Yeah, I do. I have lots of areas of work, and that is one of them.
Hey, that's part of being human. We are all
Right?
learning. We are all practicing.
Exactly.
The main thing is we want to get better, or at least those of us who follow this particular route. of
Yeah.
studying how the law of attraction works. We want to get better. We want to get
Hmm.
more in control of our lives. There was a guy who was posting, I don't know which group it was. It was one of the Abraham Hicks groups,
Hmm.
but he was clearly more, not, he wasn't a troll, but he was clearly somebody who did not buy into what was being said there and was starting fights
Hmm.
about it. And had some, I can understand why, because he was physically abused as a kid.
Oh,
And,
yep.
and he's very, very angry about it.
Hmm.
Very angry about it. And the thing that I was reminded of as I and others were um, interacting with him
Hmm.
is you got to want to get better.
Yeah.
You got to want to feel better. You got to want to get control of your life because we
Right.
were all trying to assure him he didn't have to be in that place anymore. And he wasn't
Right.
having it. He was not
Mm.
having it at all. He was more interested in hanging on to his anger and venting his rage.
Mm.
And you know what? If that's where you are and you just refuse to let go, yeah, you're going to get more of it, but no
Yeah.
one can really help you. So,
Right.
that's the choice. He's getting something out of that. I don't know what, but on some level, he's getting what he feels is some benefit from that.
He's just
Um,
used to the feeling of anger. He doesn't know how to let go because he doesn't know what that's going to be like. Like,
mhm.
what if you don't have anger? What else do I have?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That is a very common reaction. Steve was
Hmm.
talking about that this morning. He was talking about how when he was dealing with, he said it took like 26, 30 years, something like that, for
Hmm.
him to overcome what happened to him as a kid
Yeah.
and to do it through LOA. In fact, he even mentioned how he'd previously gone through 12 step and that didn't really help him at all.
Oh,
But but it
they
was
have 12 steps for that?
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
they have 12 steps for everything, so they might as
yeah,
well.
it
Yeah.
wouldn't surprise me at all. Um,
Hmm.
but the point is that until he was ready to make the change,
Hmm.
it was a tough change to make, and even then, it's still tough. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
long journey you have to kind of go through in order to
Right.
get through it. Now,
Hmm.
is that required by law? No. I mean, it could be a quick journey if he was, willing to make it quick. But in reality, like you said, he's attached to that anger. This guy
Hmm.
that we were talking about, he was attached to this anger. And until he's willing to let go of it, then it's going to be a really, really long journey.
And it's not
Because,
just anger they're attached to, they're also attached to the idea of revenge. So they
hmm
want the person who did whatever they did to them to feel the way that they feel
to
in some
suffer.
way, shape, or
Yeah.
form. Yeah. So
hmm
but no matter what happens to them, it's never going to be good enough. So you need to just let that feeling go because you'll never reach your point of happiness.
Yeah. Great point. In fact, I'm remembering one particular point in the exchange with this guy
Hmm.
where I pointed out to him that the choice was his, and
Yeah.
that he could continue to experience the rage if he wanted to, or he could change the feeling. And he took offense to that.
Hmm.
He actually took offense to
Wow.
it. Yeah, because that would mean that he's no longer a victim.
Right. Right. Yeah. That victim card. It's hard to let
Oh,
go of.
it really is. It
Yeah.
really is.
Because
And I'm
I mean,
sympathetic.
yeah. Yeah.
It's just hard. But
Hmm.
you know, I like to think that because we do have the choice, because we do have the power to decide what we're going to focus on and thereby manifest what we want into our lives. I like to think that's a powerful thing to know. I think it's
Yeah.
better. I think it's much
Hmm.
better than
Yeah.
being the victim. And I never want to be a victim again.
Hmm. Yep.
I never want to be in that role again.
Exactly.
In fact,
Exactly.
Steve said something that really blew my mind. He
Hmm.
said that he was not only able to overcome the victimhood role, but he
Hmm.
was actually able to identify, he didn't go into details, but he was able to identify where he had made himself a victim to attract more of that abuse that he got. And I was like floored.
Ooh, that's
I
deep.
was floored. I mean,
Wow.
that's hard. That's really hard to get to.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
got there. I
Hmm.
mean, whoa. More kudos to him. That's just so impressive that he was able to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
I did the same thing, so I totally understand where he's coming from.
Now, you did that in regard to the way you were treated by your father. Is that what you're thinking
Yep.
of? Yeah.
Yep. I realized I was being a victim and just because I was just complaining about him as opposed
Hmm.
to doing something about it. So I was like,
Yeah.
after he had left me somewhere I decided he left me somewhere for the last time. Like this is the last
Well,
time
that's
he's not
interesting.
going to show up. So my brother came and picked me up, and my brother's always been my savior. And I was like, that's the last time he does that to me, and canceled him.
Wow. That's
Yep.
really something.
I was
That's
no
great.
longer. Yeah, I was like, you're not conducive to my mental health, so I just can't have you in my life, and
Right.
it's just easier that way.
Well, it's also saner.
Yeah, that
I
too.
mean,
Yeah,
perfectly clear. It's just plain sanity.
yeah.
So, yeah. Jeffrey actually has a couple of questions. He
Oh, good.
says, he asks, do we have a karma escrow, or does all that matter in this now? And I'll tell
Hmm.
you honestly, I don't even know how to begin to answer his question because it's a question that I've had about karma. I
I
mean,
mean,
my
from what you said, yes, but from my point of view, I would say no because I feel like we all start off with a clean slate when we get here.
that's what I think too.
Yeah,
And that's what made karma so difficult as a concept for me.
yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
but then again, I've got people like Linda Armstrong telling me, yeah, we do carry along stuff. In fact, one of her, I can't remember the exact wording that she uses, but when she's helping to clear somebody's energy, she will help clear energy not just in this life, but any past oaths, promises, or something else from past
Oh,
lives
okay.
that no longer serve us. I'm
Mhm.
thinking, whoa, jeez. It's amazing any of us actually get better if we don't even know that the past life stuff is going on. But
Yeah,
that
that's
kind
true.
of points to this idea of a karmic carryover. So
Hmm.
I don't know. I wish Jeffrey, if you have any thoughts about that yourself, I'd like to hear your thoughts because I think we're both kind of stymied on that one.
Well, I
Um,
can tell you from my point of view, I did some past life regression once
oh, you
and
did?
found out, yes, and I found out that in one of my past lives, I was a prostitute.
Oh my God.
Believe it or not. Yeah, in
Wait a minute.
New
I
York.
thought the rule is when you do past lives, I thought everybody was supposed to be princes or princesses or something like
Yeah, no.
that. Oh.
You are who you are. There's
You are who
millions
you
of
are.
people
Oh,
in
okay.
the world. Somebody's got to be something. We can't all be princes and princesses.
Oh, okay.
This isn't Disney. So,
Oh dear. Oh no.
so yeah, I was a prostitute in New York, and I don't feel like that applies to me at all in this life. So
No,
I'm gonna go with no.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, I respect Linda like crazy. I respect people who are believers in all that kind of thing. But I think that's one of the main reasons we do come into this life with this blank slate. I think the reason the slate is wiped clean is so that we aren't influenced by that past
I
stuff.
think the reason we choose to come back is to wipe the slate clean.
Mhm. Well, that's also karma right there.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Now we're on the slippery slope.
We're bobbing and weaving.
Here we are. It's true. It's true.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that's hard to figure out for sure.
yeah.
I still don't know exactly what I feel about karma.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, that's why I whip out that bad joke periodically because it's my way of saying I can't deal with this. I can't handle it. And Jeffrey
What
also had
else?
a second question. He says, "Do you focus on the worst parts of being sick?" That's a good question, and I think
Yes,
the answer is yes,
but
but
not
for how long?
intentionally.
Well, actually, you can do it intentionally. That is helpful if you do it
Mhm.
for the purpose of working through it.
Oh,
If you do it for the purpose of just wallowing and being sick, then it's not all that helpful. Well, it creates really strong radicals of desire to get better, but other than that, it doesn't really do a whole lot to help you get out of it.
yeah.
But it's like
I tend to make things worse.
you do.
I
Okay.
do.
Well, you're probably like most people then, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are times I find when it's useful to do that. I
Mhm.
experienced that with the ligament issues I had last year,
Mhm.
um, where it was literally stopping me from walking at times.
Yeah. Mhm.
May it was particularly bad. Um, and when I was trying, I knew, I mean, here I am doing this podcast about the law of attraction, and I knew I should be able to defeat this. I should be able to overcome this with the
Right.
power of my mind and my focus, my concentration, and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
But the pain was chronic. It was constant, and
Mhm.
it was strong. It was really
Mhm.
strong. In fact, the only time I didn't really feel it strongly was when I was lying down. Even
Yeah.
then, it was a near go, but
Yeah.
but at least
Yeah.
then it was alleviated somewhat. But
Right.
moving around, sitting, just doing anything, just
Mhm.
screaming pain, really, really rough pain.
That
Was it the
sucks.
worst pain I'd ever experienced? No, but a scale of 1 to 10, it was probably a 5 or 6 all day long.
Yeah.
So that's enough to get your attention.
Mhm.
And in the course of dealing with that, I was learning how to refocus my mind on what I wanted instead, which was to feel pain free, to feel good,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
that was a long way away from where I was. One of the methods that I used was literally to look in my mind at the sore knees and
Mhm.
and try to see what was there for me. Because I think it was
Mm.
Linda who said something like, it may have been Patty Framo, I can't remember who it was. Somebody had mentioned to me, there may be a message in there for you. See if
Yeah.
you can find out what the message is. And so I did. And I didn't really get a message per se, but
Mhm.
what I did get was I became aware. I could actually kind of create a sort of a mental image
Mhm.
of my knee with because I already looked up online to see how the ligaments come into the knee. There's actually four main ligaments that go through each knee, and I
Uh-huh.
was able to visualize it because I knew I'd already figured out which ligaments were the ones giving me the problems. And I could
Yeah.
visualize them being like lighted up. That was the pain, So
Yeah.
it was like this line going down that side of the knee, and then the other knee was two of them. So I could
Mhm.
see them lighted up. And in the process of doing that, I found to my surprise that it didn't hurt as much.
Mm.
Now, I can't say I got a definite message out of it, but by really focusing my attention on where that pain was coming from in a very
Yeah.
precise, focused way, I
Mhm.
somehow seemed to have reduced it,
Mhm.
reduced the amount of pain that was involved.
Yeah.
And I can't say for sure because it's certainly not what I related at the time. Um, but I think it may have made it easier for me to do the exercise I was trying to do, which was to imagine what a good feeling knee feels like. I think that actually
Mhm.
helped me to get there because it reduced the amount of pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I'm no great expert at getting messages from stuff like that. I'm still learning from the people who are better at it than I am. But
Yeah. I don't
from
get
that
that either,
experience,
but it's okay.
I apparently got some kind of message, enough to reduce the
Yeah.
pain. You know,
Mhm.
what was it? I'm not really sure. It was like pain. Oh, Jeffrey has another message. He says, "This is how we heal ourselves through LOA and move through contrast." Oh, he's referring to focusing on the worst parts of being sick. Yeah,
Mm.
I mean, as long as it's a true focus and we're not doing it for the purpose of living in it,
Yeah.
of staying in it.
Mhm.
But if we're doing it for the purpose of understanding it and kind of listening to the pain. Wendy Dillard,
Yeah.
who was my co-host for about 9 months, she did all the afternoon podcasts with me for 9 months.
Mhm.
She used to talk about taking whatever the resistance is. You find some sort of resistance pops up. Take whatever
Mhm.
that resistance is, and you kind of take it into your hands, and you ask it questions, and you feel it, and you kind of experience all sides of it. And the more that you play with it like that, it dissolves.
Mhm.
And I think
So like
that's
sand.
kind of like sand, yeah. It's like holding
Yeah.
sand, and instead of being held together by whatever water was there, it just kind of dissolves.
Yeah.
So yeah, something like that. I think there's truth to that. That
That's
may be
interesting.
why therapy works. I mean,
Mm.
we go into therapy, digging up old issues from childhood and so
Yeah.
forth, right?
Yeah. You peel that onion back until you can fry it up.
Yeah. And when you get that far, it just kind of loses its power,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm. It does.
Which is cool.
Yeah. It is cool.
It certainly feels better.
Yes, definitely does.
But good questions, Jeffrey. Really good questions.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Yeah. So, okay, let's see. I guess it's your turn. You got another question for us to figure
I
out the
do.
answer to life, the universe, and everything?
Yes. This is an interesting one because Another friend of mine, who's actually a friend of my mother's, who I became friends with, asked me this question the other day, and apparently, like, he's part of this group where they have animal names with, but like adjectives in front of their animal names. So if you had an animal to represent you, what would it be, and what would be the adjective that you would put in front of that name?
So I have to pick the name of an animal, like a lion or a zebra or an elephant, and then I have to put an adjective in front of that. Is that the idea?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. Hmm.
And the animals to represent you, and also the adjective, obviously. Oh,
I
your
have
screen froze
no
again.
idea. Well, that's because I have no idea how to answer it. My screen
Your screen was
representing
like,
Alex
no,
is
we don't know this one, Walt.
this does not compute. Uh, wow. See, where I get stuck on this is not understanding even, how do I describe myself as being an animal? What animal represents me, and why is it that that represents me? I mean, my first reaction is just to go to astrology because my sister has kind of grilled me on what my astrological signs are.
Right,
Um,
right.
and my sun sign is Taurus the bull.
Uh-huh.
My moon is Cancer, and then my rising sign is Leo the lion. So I think I'd pick either a bull or a lion. But
Okay,
what
okay.
do I do with that? I'm not really sure. Uh, the confused lion? I don't know. Well, there was a cowardly lion. Why not a confused lion?
I like it though. I kind of like it. It says you're brave, but you also ask a lot of questions.
Yes.
That means you're not afraid to ask a lot of questions.
It's
That's what that
true.
says to me.
It's
Yeah.
true. That is very
Yeah.
true. I'm not afraid. I learned that from my father, actually.
Yeah.
My father was the world champion question asker.
Mm.
I mean, he could ask questions about anything. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I remember we took a couple of long distance trips across country with tents and trailers and that kind of thing,
Hmm.
just to see the country and to visit family and so forth, but mainly to see the country. And this was back in the late 1960s, early 1970s, which didn't have a lot of the modern conveniences you have now. So a lot of the time, and the cars weren't as reliable, and there were issues you had to deal with. And let's say the car broke down, the engine had an issue or something like that. My dad would pull into this gas station out in the middle of nowhere and absolutely grill the guy about everything about it. I mean, the poor mechanic would be like staring at him like, I don't even know how to answer the questions you're asking, let alone the ones you're about to ask me. Because my
Right.
dad just would never be satisfied until he felt like he had the entire picture so that he could make a decision about what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, you learn watching somebody like that who can just ask a question to explore every aspect. We talked a moment ago about taking a block of resistance, something that you've
Hmm.
discovered is getting in the way, and is just
Hmm.
working through it and feeling all around it and exploring it and asking it questions and so forth.
Hmm.
That skill that I learned from my dad of just being really relentlessly persistent about getting your questions answered has served me in that particular purpose for the idea of getting past those resistances. So I don't really run into too many resistances anymore that I can't move aside. The
Yeah.
hard part for me is identifying them. If I can find them, that's really the big part.
Mm.
But once I get there,
Yeah.
I move through them pretty quickly. They can't really keep up with me. So,
Oh, that's
now
that's a great story.
is that the confused lion? I'm not sure.
I think so. I think so.
Okay, what's yours? I mean, now
Mine
it's your turn.
is magical unicorn.
Ooh, oh,
Yeah.
that's nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, what's the meaning behind that?
um well, see, we were me, my friend and I were having this argument. He's like, "Well, unicorns are already magical, so you need to pick another adjective." I said, "No, no, no, no. Unicorns are mystical. That's different." So, so I can be a magical unicorn. I feel like I am magical because I don't know, I just bring so much joy into everyone's life. Like
Oh,
every life I touch, I bring so much joy, and there's something magical about being able to do that
that's true.
without any without trying too hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just part of who I am. And unicorns, I just love unicorns.
Okay.
They're my favorite animal.
I like the fact that
Probably
you
be
picked it. I'm sorry. I was going to say I like the fact that you picked an animal that can't actually be found in the animal kingdom, but it's a very popular one. I like that you picked that one.
you can't find in the animal kingdom.
I'm sorry.
I'm magical. I can find a unicorn.
You can find it. Okay. Well, perhaps you can help me find a way to get this cam to work because right now it's giving me a hard time.
Oh, you're coming back. Hold on. Stand by. There we are.
I don't know.
Because I'm magical.
See, that's what it is. See, I should have asked you to fix it. Then it would all be done by now. So
Well, I just said you're coming back, so
there it is. Okay.
it just happened.
Okay. Let's see. Jeffrey has more here. There are meditations you can do to meet your spirit animals.
Yeah,
If
that's
anyone
how this whole
knows.
conversation had started, because he was doing this deep meditation and met his spirit animal and tried to identify it and figure out how it represented him. So now in his group of whatever, he is known as that animal.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right. That's another one of those topics that I haven't explored much. It's one that my sister tried to tell me about many years
Hmm.
ago, and others have talked to me about too.
Hmm.
Because spirit animals, Tom Wells, who does the Friday show with us Friday morning, very
Hmm.
much into that because he had all this experience with shaman and so forth. Um,
Yeah.
they play a major role in Native American Indian tribes. But I can't say I've known a whole lot about them. I remember reading a book one time that kind of identified what the different spirit animals are for, and I don't remember which
Oh.
tribe it was associated with.
Hmm.
But obviously, it didn't stick very well because I can't tell you any of them.
Some information we retain, some we refrain.
Mm.
So
Once again, I remain the confused lion. But interesting. Okay.
uh,
Spirit animals. I
yeah.
mean, this is we're breaking new ground here on the show. This is the first time we've talked about spirit animals before, and probably not going to
Yep.
be the last one because the way the law of attraction works, you know how it works.
Yep.
So
That's true.
somebody's going to come along. One of the other co-hosts is going to start mentioning something about spirit animals. My money's on Linda,
Hmm.
but we will see what happens.
Yep. My money's on Tom.
Tom could. Tom could.
Yep.
Yep. Let's just say it's going to be a close race.
Yep. Agreed.
All right. Now we tend to ask questions about how to deal with stuff, right?
Right.
But Tom and I once did a show, and this is what made me think of it when you mentioned Tom just now. He and I once
Hmm.
did a show that was based entirely on one of the Abraham Hicks processes. At the back
Okay.
of their book, Asking It is Given, they've got 22 processes you can do,
Hmm.
and each one is assigned for, depending where you are on the scale. Are you in a real low end? Are you at the high end? Somewhere in the middle? What's your emotional set point? And then you
Okay.
find the appropriate processes to go with them. This is one of
Hmm.
the processes that's on that scale, and it's the process that's known as "Wouldn't it be nice if?" The idea
Mm.
being that you start all of your sentences with the phrase "Wouldn't it be nice if?" and then you fill it in with a blank, and then you just kind of keep going on and on, coming up with one after another, and it's a way to kind of lift you up into a higher flying place because you're focusing presumably on "Wouldn't it be nice if?" applying to what you want and not on what you don't want.
Right.
That's the general idea behind it.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to suggest that we do the rest of the show on "Wouldn't it be nice if?" like we did that time, although that was a lot of fun. But if I were to ask you to fill it in with what's your number one thing to fill in the blank with, what would you say? Wouldn't be nice if what?
Wouldn't it be nice if Mike and I got married?
Oh, yeah, that'd be fabulous.
Yeah, I like
That
that
would
one.
be like that. I mean, not only would that be wonderful for you, it would be like one more win for the show because that's
Right?
one part of the show. It
Yeah.
has.
Carlos would have to officiate because he's the reason the whole thing started.
That's
So,
true. Yeah. Yeah.
hmm
He turned you onto that app, didn't he? That's right.
yeah, he did. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Does he know about that? Had you let him know?
No, because he left the day I was going to tell him.
Oh, I thought you'd been in contact with him since then.
Well, that's true. I could message him. I
Yeah.
meant to, and I just haven't gotten around to it.
Oh, you got to tell him. You got to tell him.
Yeah.
He'll love it.
Yeah.
He'll love it. Yeah. That's good. That's good. So, not to press the issue too much, but do you have any kind of a time frame in mind? Have you and Mike talked about it all?
I mean, we've only been dating 2 months, so not
That's
really, but
that's
at the
that's how
same
long it took
time,
Louise to ask me to find out what my interest was. 2 months after we
well,
met. That's when she
like
brought
I
it up.
said, at the same time, I was online. I was talking to my friend in Japan one morning, and he was watching me talk to her, and we were sending pictures back and forth to each other of rings, bridesmaid dresses, wedding dresses. And he looks at me and he goes, "Who's getting married? Is she getting married?" I was like, "No." He's like, "Are you getting married?" I was like, "I don't know."
Hint,
Hopefully.
hint, hint, hint.
Hopefully. I was like, this is just a girl thing that we do. We've been planning these things since we were like 5 years old. So I don't want you to feel pressure, but just know I had these things ready to go.
It's funny though because as I recall that time, now we met in May of 1998.
hmm
By July of 98, she was starting to talk about wanting to get married. She was trying to do it.
Yeah.
She's a former therapist, so she was trying to do it very low key.
Right. Right.
But
Yeah,
I
she was
remember,
supposed to.
yep. But I remember what my emotional reaction was. My emotional reaction was, it was too fast. It was too much. I
As
really,
every guy does.
yeah. And it wasn't that I was against it. It was just it was too quick. I mean,
Yeah.
I had anticipated, taking a good 6 months just to get to know her before I even asked myself the question.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
and the
Well,
women
we know
women think,
that, but we're just saying this is where I want the relationship to go. If you're not
"Hmm,
on the same train as I am, get off the tracks now
that was pretty
because
much it.
you're
Yeah.
you're holding the door. You're standing in the doorway for somebody else.
And I'm trying to remember what my answer was exactly, but I remember the kind of general idea of it. The general idea was, well, I'm not against the idea. I just need a little time to get used to the relationship first.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I just I just need a little time here.
I asked him the other day. I said, "Do you feel like we moved too fast?" Because we started dating like I don't know, like a week after we were talking,
Mm,
and then
yeah,
and then like a week later we were like official.
yeah.
And then a week later he bought me a TV. So and then the week after that he has a drawer. So
Yeah, right.
so he's like, he's like, "No, I don't feel like we move too fast." He's like, "I feel like we move at the pace of us." And I was like, "Good answer.
Yeah, that's a
I
good
like
answer.
it."
Yeah, very good answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I guess there is something gender related that the woman wants. Maybe it has to do with. Do you want to have a family?
No, no
No,
kids. No,
so it's
I
not
have
that.
dogs. Good enough. No, it's not my biological clock at all.
So it's not really a nesting instinct in that sense.
Ah.
No. Okay. Well,
He has brought it up. He said if we were to have kids, we would have adorable kids. I said, that's true.
well, that's always true.
Yeah, I know.
Very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was an interesting time. 1998 was a great year. It was a
hmm
wonderful year because it's when I
It
met
was a good
Louise.
year for me too.
Was it?
Yeah, I was in 8th grade. It was great.
Okay. Well, it was a good year for me because I had let go of 20 years of frustration with relationships. I'd thrown in the towel, and a month later I met Louise, and
hmm
then now we're going through getting to know each other and so forth.
hmm
And it was different because for the first time in my life, a woman I was interested in was actually paying attention to me. I,
Right.
I was
Yeah.
blown away by that.
Yeah.
That alone took more time to get used to
hmm
than anything
hmm
else. Like
Yeah.
I was getting good feedback all the time.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
The phrase that always hung in the back of my mind was waiting for the other shoe to drop.
That's what I said.
That's exactly what it felt like.
Exactly what I said. Because my mother's like, so what's wrong with him? And I was like, I don't. I'm waiting for the other shoe, Ma. I'm waiting for the other shoe.
And when I finally realized that the other shoe wasn't going to drop,
Yeah.
it was an eye-opening experience. Like,
Yeah, it is.
really?
Yeah.
Not going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started to feel confident about the relationship.
Yeah. See,
That
we're two peas in the same pod, Walt.
I guess we are, really. Yeah, very much the same thing. It's really something. That
Yeah.
that year, though, well, plus for people who, I think most people around the world have heard of New York Yankees, even if they don't know what baseball is
Yeah.
about. I've been a
Yeah.
Yankee fan all my life. I grew up in upstate New York. That was my, oh, I know. I'm not a Red Sox fan. It's terrible. But
Oh.
but I put it this way: I supported the evil empire long before George Steinbrenner even thought about buying them.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, Steinbrenner bought the Yankees in '74. I was a fan in '66. In fact,
Tell them.
I became a fan the year they finished in last place. That's a real fan.
That's gangsta right there.
That's a real fan.
That's an OG fan.
And I did it as an 8-year-old kid for the best possible reason,
Hmm.
the kind that you would associate with any 8-year-old, which is I
Hmm.
saw this guy with the number 7 on his back named Mickey Mantle hit this towering home run into the upper deck, and I said, "Wow, I'm a Yankee fan."
Wow, that was a long time ago.
It was, and I actually got to see Mickey Mantle play in his last year in 1968.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so I've been a fan ever since then. Well, 1998 was a wonderful year for the Yankees. They broke all kinds of
Yeah.
records, won the World Series. I mean, everything they did went right. And here I'm having to choose
Hmm.
on a daily basis. Do I spend time with Louise or do I watch the Yankees? It wasn't, I could do both. It was one or the other. And in a sense, that was a painful thing because here it was my opportunity to see my team having the best year of their entire history. And I couldn't watch it. It was almost like, what was the movie? The first movie that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck did, the one that they wrote together. Good Will Hunting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good Will Hunting, Robin Williams plays his therapist
Yep.
and
Hmm.
tells the story about how he was in Fenway Park on the day that Carlton Fisk hit the home run down the right field, or down the left field line, down the third base line,
Hmm. Hmm.
and how he had the tickets for that game. And
Yeah.
then he tells Matt Damon's character, "But I didn't see it." He says, "What do you mean you didn't see it?" "Well, I went out with this girl."
Yeah.
How could you not be there for the best thing ever
Yeah.
happened? He said, "Well,
That
I had to
wasn't
go
the
see a
best thing
girl."
that
That's
ever
all.
happened to him.
That's right. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, and he makes a wonderful point there that's what happened with me. I mean, I was watching. I mean, I promise you, when it came time for the playoffs in the World Series, I asked Louise to watch with me because I really, really wanted to see that. And
Yeah.
she was willing. She actually turned it into a fun thing because the Yankees have their pinstripes when they play at
Yeah.
home, right? She
Uh-huh.
calls that their pajamas. So they play in their pajamas. And when they slide into second base, oh, he's got his pajamas dirty. His mama's not going to like that.
That stain's not coming out.
So we found a way to have fun with it.
That's cute.
Yeah, but that was kind of emblematic of what happened that year because I did have to choose on a day-to-day basis. And what I think surprised me more than anything else was how easy the choice was.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
really wasn't because I am a diehard Yankee fan, but
Yeah.
that year it was an easy choice. I had finally met my mate, and there was no
Hmm.
way I was going to let anything get in the way with
Well, see, I made it easy for Mike because I just turned on the Patriots. I was
that.
just like he would wake up from a nap and the game was already on. I had paused it on the DVR so he didn't miss anything. He could fast forward through commercials. I was like, cool, it's cool.
And it was a good year for it because the Pats won the Super Bowl. So you
Well,
picked
we
a
do
good time
that
to do
every
it.
year, so.
Well, nevertheless, they did it with a quarterback who had never done it at that advanced age before. So there was some firsts
Yeah.
for them this year. Yeah,
It was an interesting game, but quite a boring game.
yeah, it was. I mean, I didn't watch
Yeah.
it, but I saw from the final when I saw the score of 13-3, I said, "Oh yeah, that can't have been very good."
And then nothing happened for the first half, so I was like, I'm so bored.
One thing I do want to mention, we had earlier been talking about victims of abuse.
Hmm.
And I just feel like I need, for some reason, to talk about, it's hard to call it abuse, but
Hmm.
traumas that
Yeah.
are suffered by professional football players.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
one of one of my favorite. I was actually a follower of the Miami Dolphins back when they won their two Super Bowls many years ago,
Hmm.
and one of their best players was a defensive man named Nick Buoniconti, who
Hmm.
apparently today is suffering from horrible consequences related to concussion injury.
Yeah, I was
He has
gonna say.
Parkinson's. He has Parkinson's disease. He has
Hmm.
all kinds of negative effects from it. And I mention it in part because Nick himself. I mean, back in that day, you didn't get to know players as well as you do now because with all the
Yeah.
social media and such, you find all kinds of stuff. But
Right.
even from what you knew about him at the time, he was just a good guy. Nick
Hmm.
Buoniconti. I mean, I don't care which team you rooted for, even if you rooted against the Dolphins. He was just a good guy. He was a good
Yeah.
player, but he was a good guy. And there, I mean,
Hmm.
we all know there are plenty of players who are kind of nasty and so forth. He wasn't one of those guys.
Yep.
He was just a good
Yeah.
guy. So when a good guy goes down like that, and he has
Hmm.
really gone down, um, I mean, it affects you. It touches you. And I keep thinking about him in particular. I mean, there's plenty of coverage about what's going on with the concussion issue. Um, there's lawsuits and all kinds of things like that. But his particular story just kind of resonates with me.
Hmm.
So I'm not even sure how to tie it into what we're talking about here. I just want to kind of put out there, I'm aware of it,
Yeah.
and I want other people to be aware of it too.
Yeah.
Um, and the only other thing I want to mention about it is I remember here in the U.S., the main sports network is called ESPN.
Right.
It's actually here in Connecticut, right about an hour away from where Louise and I live, actually.
Oh.
But ESPN, yeah, they're in Bristol, Connecticut, very close. But ESPN is, of course, the network where you find most conversations about anything related to sports. And there was one day
Right.
where their main commentators were discussing
Hmm.
the idea of girls playing football,
Hmm.
and all of the panelists were against the idea of letting girls play football. Why? Because if they had daughters, they really thought it was inappropriate to put their daughters at risk for serious injury.
Okay, but
And
not for your sons.
that was my reaction.
Yeah.
That was my reaction. Like, you care so much about your daughters, but not your sons.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm saying this today because I want to put out there, if we're going to be concerned about the impact of concussion on not just professional football players, but also kids growing up, we should be doing it for all kids
Right.
and not just for girls. We should be doing it for all kids because all
Yeah.
kids are precious.
Hmm.
And I don't know how it's all going to iron out. I've often wondered if the same kind of issue happens with rugby because football kind of derived from rugby, and rugby
And
is a very
boxing.
violent surface. It's very violent kind of sport. Um, but it's something that even soccer, what's
Yeah.
often called football around the world, has this risk because they can head the ball, and
Yep.
it looks like the medical evidence is beginning to show that soccer players can develop the same kind of injury, not with the same degree of prevalence that American football players have for obvious reasons. American football is very violent, but
Hmm.
nevertheless, the problem exists, and I think we should be mindful of it. We should be paying attention to the fact that there are so many people who are growing up playing sports that could actually harm them.
Yeah.
And not that I want to give up sports. I'm not arguing for that at all. I love sports. I mean, like I
Hmm.
said, I'm a baseball fan, but and people have been killed playing baseball. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, there are steps that have been taken to kind of reduce the risk, and I think that needs to happen across the board. So I just
Hmm.
want to put out a message of mindfulness. Like, we should pay attention to
Yeah.
this stuff. This is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
So that's my final thought. What's your final thought for the day?
My final thought for the day. My final thought for the day is think good things and good things will happen.
Oh, now that's a very happy,
that's
positive way to end it. I like that.
that's what I'm trying to do.
See that? See, here I did bring us down. You brought us right back up again.
That's my job. I'm a magical
That's
unicorn.
fantastic. I love that. And you're absolutely right. Yeah. It's what we're trying to do all the time,
Yeah. Mhm.
right? And I was also realizing today, and this past few days dealing with the flu that I was dealing with,
Right.
that it doesn't matter so much when we don't succeed. Doesn't matter so much when we fail to get that mindset we're looking for, when we fail to,
Yeah.
redirect our attention where we want to redirect it, and, find the positive side. We can't always find the positive side. What matters is that we're trying.
Yeah.
And that's something that doesn't often come up in law of attraction circles, that trying is okay, trying is
Yeah.
good.
Hmm.
Usually it's, it's like Yoda said, you do or you do not. There is no try. But trying is important.
Yeah.
Trying is another word for struggle.
Yeah.
And Joel Elston's been an advocate of struggle for quite some time. The
I am
importance of
too.
it, the value of it,
Yeah.
the power behind it. And it's something that I think deserves a lot of attention. So while we're being mindful of the sports industry, let's also be mindful of the importance of trying and trying and trying, struggling
Yep.
through it, working your way to it. Because ultimately, that's how we become deliberate creators anyway, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know you do.
Yep.
I see it every time I
Definitely.
talk with you. I don't know if you're aware of it. Ever since that you first came onto the show, which was what, about 4 or 5 months ago, something like that.
Something like
Um,
that.
Ever since you came on, when you first came on, I mean, you were great. You were kind of on. You were on stage more than anything else. And then
Yeah.
very quickly, you just kind of fell into, this is your daily routine. This is what, not daily, but your weekly routine. This is something
Right.
that you just do regularly, and you kind
Hmm.
of you let your hair down. You stopped
Yeah.
coloring your hair, among other things. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think
Definitely
part of
got
it is
comfortable.
you got very comfortable, no doubt. And through that comfort, you kind of exemplified, well, here's a girl. I mean, you've had lots to deal with. I mean,
Yep.
oh my God, how many things have you had to deal with? If you count them all up, probably half a dozen of them.
Oh, I don't even know. It's countless.
Yeah, it's crazy. But
Hmm.
you, by example, have been showing how, well, if at first you don't succeed, try again.
Yep.
And you just keep
Facts.
doing it with a happy smile on your face. Like, whoa, that's probably the most wonderful example to have. So thank you for
Thank
that
you.
example. Yeah, no, you deserve credit for that. You really do.
I
I
try.
mean, considering everything that you go through, you're always laughing, you're always joking, you're always
Hmm.
smiling. That's really something. So
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of bad moods lately. I mean, I
that's
went through
good.
a period where, it was all bad moods, but
Mm,
yeah, I don't do that anymore. I cancel those emotions.
good for you.
Yeah.
Well, what that tells me is at some point you're going to start seeing some changes in your experience where the various things you're dealing with occur.
Yeah,
You-
hopefully. Fingers
I think you
crossed.
will. I think it's going to
Yeah.
happen. I mean, the first one that comes to my mind is the agoraphobia, the fear of being out
Yeah.
in public spaces and so forth. I have
Hmm.
a feeling that's going to somehow start alleviating itself. I don't know how, but somehow.
Yeah.
I think it's going to, just because of how wonderful your attitude has been. So,
Well, it's starting there because Mike likes to spoil me. So he's like, "Oh, let's like for instance when he bought me the TV, he's like, "Oh, let's go to BJ's and buy a TV." And I was like,
ah.
BJ's is such a big store. And it's Saturday. Oh,
So everybody's
I
going to
was
be
like,
there.
I don't wanna, I don't wanna.
Hmm. Yeah,
But luckily, the TVs are right by the entrance, so we were in and out.
that's good. But was
Yeah,
it a good experience?
I got a TV, so.
How bad could it be, right?
But no, I mean, and I had my service dog with me, and I had Mike, so it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
My cat just stepped on this.
It was like my turn.
Oh dear. Ah, there we go. I think you were actually hearable. I was the one who couldn't hear you because my cat stepped on the keyboard and managed to mute the sound, but I got it
Oh,
back.
yeah, but then we lost video again.
Oh, well, that's all
Well, we're
right.
out of
We're
time
down.
anyway.
We're out of time, so I'll worry about. I'll send the message to Blue Jeans like, hey, you got to fix the video.
Right.
But thank you for such a great discussion and for some good questions, and also to Jeffrey in particular for sharing his questions. And
Yes.
Alex, I will be talking with you tomorrow morning, won't I, with Kelly
Tomorrow
Craigie?
morning.
All right. So we will see you then. We will also see our regular listeners as well next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody. My cat is currently looking at me, wondering, why are you still doing a podcast when you could be petting me? What's wrong with you?